better turn that off before YouTube tries to flag my video. Check, check, check. How do I want to do this? Oh, this should hear me from here because the computer's really close. All right. It is 9:57 a.m. Let's see. What is going on in the sky right now? Let's see. Where are the planets? I might be able to move this camera a little bit closer. Let's see. How we looking? How we looking? We looking all right. The tablecloth is a little bit wrinkled, but all right. So let's see here. How we looking? Leo is rising. The sun is in Gemini. I could dig that. I could dig it. I could dig it. I could dig it. I could dig it. Moon is at 19 Aries, applying a trine to Saturn. Whatever. Who cares? We're still doing a video. I will be watching. Hey, Winter. Hi, Clyde. Bun E. I don't know. Yes, that was jazz playing because that's what I love the most. So, is this live here? No. Okay, now it's live. All right, so I have a few announcements. I'll be watching the chat window, not because I'm going to offer you readings. No, I'll be watching the chat window for your questions about what I've laid down here. And if I have time at the end, I'll answer more questions, excuse me, about astrology in general. And other announcements are that I am offering my 2019 eclipse special. See, this is the moment where like my thing starts opening up and I feel it start ready to talk to me, but I'm not ready yet, so y'all don't have to hold on. All y'all people trying to talk to me wherever they are. Anyways, I am offering more slots for my 2019 eclipse special. The last day to book that is Sunday, June 30th. So if you've been waiting to get a reading from me, this is a good time to do it. Also, my prices will be changing come July 15th. So again, if you've been waiting to get a reading from me, you should do it now because my structure is changing a little bit. I still will have price points that are affordable, but you won't be able to get as much of my time because sister got bills, like life be lifing. And yeah, so that's that on that. I think those were my only two announcements. That's it. We are here in this moment that we have been approaching on rocky terrain for a while now. I ranted on Instagram maybe yesterday or the day before yesterday about how now everyone, all of the other astrologers in the astrological community are talking about the eclipses. But one thing that's so important about my work is that I truly do believe that there is a time and season for all things. And so for me, it's important to pay attention to the time all the time and really see the larger context of how something like an eclipse fits into the grand scheme of what's happening in our lives. And for me, this is why I've called 2019 Mutable Madness 2019. The eclipses are part of a larger conversation that we're having, and they provide an anchor in space and time for us to talk about it. So when I say something like eclipse season, what I mean is that the sign where the sun will be during a new moon eclipse or a full moon eclipse is occupied by a planet. For us, that began May 6th of 2019 when Mars crossed over into Gemini, and it was the first planet to enter that sign. For Um, Now, Venus is the last planet to cross into Gemini, which gives us a little bit of a narrative, breaking free to come together, right? So if Mars is crossing over all of these eclipse degrees first, it's manifesting as disruption, separation, um, unexpected events, fighting, bickering, violence, combat. All of these are Mars. Emotional autonomy, self preservation, all of those things are very Mars. So that when we come to this last planet, Venus, which is the last planet to cross through Gemini and enter Gemini, now we're talking about relationship and community and creating a consensus and negotiation. And we're thinking about the language that allows us to do that. Words mean things. I have been saying that words mean things since the first eclipse in the Gemini Sagittarius sign pair, which began in July of 2018. Words mean things. Now you're hearing everyone say words matter. They do matter, right? This is one thing that I'm really good at is coming up with or channeling these phrases or themes that articulate a collective experience that we're having, but also a personal experience that we're having. If you have questions, please wait until the end. If you have questions while I'm laying down the cards about the cards, I will answer them then. But if you have general questions, please ask them at the end. So, with that being said, um, I don't. Um, with that being said, I want to talk just a little bit about the fact that at this particular eclipse, which is at 16 degrees Gemini, it is a solar eclipse. So we got to talk about that piece. The other piece is that we need to talk about Mercury because Mercury is in charge of this eclipse. So what is Mercury doing? So solar eclipse. If you have the 2019 eclipse guide, which is still available for download in my online store, you know what a solar eclipse is. You know how it's different from a regular new moon. You know how it is different from a lunar eclipse, but I'll share it with you here for those who don't have it. A solar eclipse is like a portal. It's a door. It's a path where the road forks. Oftentimes at eclipses, you can look back at the last solar eclipse, for example, and see that as a defining moment in your life that you turned a corner. And so when you look back, that becomes a marker in time for your current season or a marker in time for your current circumstances. So we can look back at the past two solar eclipses, which were in Sagittarius on January 5th or 6th, 2019, depending on where you live. And then the other one was July 12th, 2018, which was a Gemini eclipse. So those two moments in time serve as markers and turning points in our lives regarding this conversation of words mean things, redefining truth, and how do I make my life a living testimony of my intentions and convictions. Norma Jean Baker, hello. Celeste, good morning. Reed, good morning. So yeah, we look back at solar eclipses as markers in time. And this is part of how I'm trying to change how we talk about astrology. Yes, the sign is important, but you can understand and use astrology without signs. Leave the sign stuff up to me, and I just tell you the time, and you can craft the narrative and pull together the relevant pieces just by paying attention to what's happening at certain times. Okay? So, what were you doing? What declaration, what change, or what shifts did you make in July of 2018? In January of 2019, again, what doors were opening? At a solar eclipse, you can abandon something. At a solar eclipse, you can abandon something or you can embrace something. Sometimes it's both. At an eclipse in Gemini, you might speak your mind as you walk away, or you might declare what you're walking towards with your language. Okay? Now, Mercury is the planet that is in charge of this eclipse. And poor for Mercury. I just have to shake my head. Mercury on July 2nd is moving super duper slow, which means that it is emphasized. It is loud. It is demanding our attention. It is demanding that we honor it, that we listen to what it's saying. Mercury is preparing to station retrograde, which will happen on July 7th. So, really, we're watching. Once the moon enters Gemini, and let me just find out what date this is. Once the moon enters Gemini on Monday, July 1st, all the way through the following week up until the 10th or 11th. Really, I can't even say that because after that, we're up into the next eclipse. So really, the next month is really intense. We have a solar eclipse in Gemini on July 2nd that's ruled by Mercury. Mercury is going to station retrograde in Cancer on July 7th. On July 8th, Mercury will back up into a mutually applying conjunction with Mars. I have spoken at length about Mercury and Mars. In recent memory, the last time we would have experienced a Mercury retrograde that featured Mars was in 2017. August, September, October of 2017 was the last time we would have had this Mercury-Mars dance with Mercury retrograde. So here we are again with this Mercury-Mars dance, this time in Cancer, and then Mars will conjoin in Leo. And no, I lied. They first conjoined in Gemini on June 18th, and then they will conjoin in Cancer on July 8th, and then they will conjoin in Leo on September 2nd, something like that. So this Mercury-Mars story that we're in the middle of is an important piece of this eclipse. Again, remember, Mars brings disruption. It makes things happen suddenly. You might suddenly break up with someone. You might suddenly leave a job. You might suddenly be fired. You might suddenly embrace an opportunity. You might suddenly move. You might suddenly get into an accident. You might suddenly fight. All of these things where without premeditation, you do something. That's the nature of Mars. I know people like to say it's Uranus, but it's not. It's Mars. So that's that on that. What are you saying? What are you speaking your mind? What words are bubbling up in you that they're like on the tip of your tongue? You're trying to figure out if you should say them, maybe hold them back, maybe go with it. I don't know. You have to use discernment in this moment. Being honest in the moment doesn't mean that you feel that way forever, but words have weight at this moment. So what you say matters. What you say has far-reaching consequences. Words that you have said in the past might come back to be reckoned with. Did you mean what you said? Did you say what you meant? Did you change your mind? Did you interpret that correctly? Did you really understand what they meant? When all else fails, actions speak louder than words. So words can be used to keep you from properly interpreting what you see or from believing what you see. By giving something language, sometimes it undermines your perception because now you are looking for the word that has been given to what you're looking at rather than using your own perception and judgment to understand it. So how are people using language in order to keep you from seeing what you know you're seeing with your own eyes? How are people using language to distract you and to undermine your perception and judgment? It's really important. And how do your own perceptions and judgments keep you from understanding what other people mean? That's really important, okay? So now I'm going to do these cards. I'm going to shuffle. This is the Golden Thread Tarot here, my favorite deck to use for these things. I just ordered the Dust to Onyx Tarot. I'm kind of excited to use that, and I hope it gets here by the full moon eclipse in Sagittarius that is on September 26th. Lord help me. The full moon lunar eclipse in Sagittarius on July 16th. So maybe I'll have that, and y'all get to see me use that. So, anyways, I'm shuffling these cards here. Every time we do one of these new moon eclipse readings, I don't have a question. These cards don't have any positions. I am just allowing spirit to speak through me. I'm using my intuition, my clairaudience, my clairsentience, and all of those things to speak about these cards. I may come up with a totally brand new way of understanding these cards based on the context of this moment, based on what I hear spirit speaking to me. Sometimes you might see me stare off into the distance because I'm kind of like downloading or channeling something. So I'm going to shuffle these a little bit more, and then I'm going to cut the deck. And once I cut the deck, the card on the bottom will be our significator for this reading. That means that it will be the card that it will be the card it will be the card that provides context for how we interpret every other card in this reading. It'll be our reference point. It'll give us a container for understanding. The only thing that I have to say, just as a prelude to laying down these cards, is that words mean things, especially when you're trying to make your life and this world a living testimony of your intentions and convictions. So that is that on that. Let me do one more little shuffle here, and then I'll be ready to cut the deck here. It's just a certain feeling I get when I know I'm finished shuffling, so that's why I just keep going sometimes. Okay, for real. Last one this time. All right. The card on the bottom of the deck here is the King of Pentacles. This King of Pentacles has reindeer antlers. He has antlers. There's a castle. He's sitting on a bench with some leaves. He's got a pentacle in his lap. For some reason, I almost feel like this King of Pentacles is like there's Pentacles is money, right? Pentacles is like the material world. But there's like, I got to go make some money. I need to spend some money. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough energy, or I got some more energy, or I need some more, or my health, right? All of these Pentacles related things. But for some reason, when I'm looking at this card in this moment, there's a sense of detachment for some reason, as if maybe he's, that's not a good example. I was going to say maybe he's a banker, but still a banker still has a profit motive. So I guess what I'm thinking about is like, what does it mean to be, like, what is the role that someone would play when they are not concerned with spending or making money, but the managing of it? Maybe I'm thinking about like the Federal Reserve or something like that. I don't know. Anyways, King of Pentacles likes to go get a job. That's what the King of Pentacles likes to do. He likes to go get a job. Kings are consuming and dissecting, right? So they're breaking things up into their pieces, and they are consuming or using it. They go out and get more. To be a king in the material world means to have dominion and authority over your money and finances, to have dominion and authority over your physical body, to have control over your world and your environment. But also sometimes it can mean that you are stuck in perceiving things with your senses and unable to conceptually understand things. I'll have to come back to that, because that is not a card that we've seen in these readings, so I don't know. Page of Swords, the Emperor, the Queen of Swords. Whelp, 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 whelp. I said words mean things, and look at these swords here. Look at these doggone swords. Let's start with the two swords here, which are the Page of Swords and the Queen of Swords. Pages consider and contemplate, they explore. Queens conserve and discern. So there's a wisdom about the Queen of Swords. To conserve your words means to get straight to the point. To discern your words, to discern in the realm of swords, is to say what needs to be said in the way that your listener will understand. There's something very fluid about the Queen of Swords, is that she understands the nature of words, and that words in different contexts can have different meanings. And that when you really understand the other person's level of comprehension or their biases, you know how to use words to get the point across and say what needs to be said. Whereas maybe the King of Swords would be so pressed about a word meaning a specific thing, right? The King of Swords would like pull out the dictionary and be like, this word means this. But the Queen of Swords, she understands that if I want to get my point across to you, it's more than about me. It's more than semantics. It's me understanding what words mean to you in your bias, in your context, in your language, in your experience, and me choosing, consciously discerning the words that need to be said in order for you to understand. Now, the Page of Swords, because the Page of Swords is contemplating and considering, the Page of Swords is learning. The Page of Swords is learning. There's something here about mastery with the Emperor there. But I'm going to come back to that Emperor because up under that King, I'm just kind of shook. Anyways, the Page of Swords is researching, listening, answering questions, exploring. The Page of Swords is always, well, what does that mean? But what does that mean? Well, why did you say that? Well, let me look it up. Right? There's a curiosity that's very Gemini in the Page of Swords. The Page of Swords, in contemplating and considering and exploring, they're open to a new understanding. Now, there is a transformation here from the Page of Swords to the Queen of Swords, and the Emperor is the card in between. The Emperor is generative, meaning it's externally focused, rather than asking, is this going to happen? Well, should it happen? The Emperor says, this is what's happening and I'm making it happen, and it's not up for debate. There is a sense of control and authority, stepping into the seat of power. So what does it look like to step into the seat of power in your life? And how does that transform your curiosity into discernment? How does stepping into the seat of authority in your life transform your disposition from curiosity to discernment? I think that there's something in this moment around really understanding that you just can't say anything. And that when you're listening to other people, it's important to listen for context. I'm not really sure how this connects back to the King of Pentacles, but in personal context, I'm curious about people's employment situation. I'm curious about their income and their job. I'm curious about what it means for people to take on work or to choose paths where they're the king rather than the queen, or rather than the knight, or rather than the page. Again, a Page of Pentacles would be contemplating and considering. Excuse me, the Page of Pentacles to me would be budgeting, right? Literally, well, how much do I have and what can I do with this and when am I going to get more? Well, this is interesting, that curiosity. The Knight is devoted. They are sticking to the task. They are not easily distracted by something else. They put their effort and energy in, and they are devoted to continuing along that path in order to reap the consequences or harvest of what they put in. The queen conserves and discerns, meaning she is frugal. She understands how to use what she has. She understands how to work with what she has. She's creative, very resourceful, very much about logistics. But the Queen of Pentacles is externally focused. Kings are the yang energy, and yang always says, I do not accept this world the way that it is. My perception, my ideas, the strength of my will, all of these things are enforced on the world around me. My presence changes the atmosphere. So, what does it mean to change the atmosphere in the realm of Pentacles? I don't know. We're going to find out. Let's see what this next row of cards says. The Sun. The Lovers. And the Hermit. Oh, I feel it coming down on me right now. Shucky ducky quack quack. The Sun. The lights come on. There is clarity. There's a real story in these cards. The lights come on. There's clarity. What you see is what you get. The Sun is also very Gemini in that you take things at face value. You see things for what they are. There is no room for interpretation with the Sun because the lights are on. You can see. The Lovers, right at the center of this reading, underscores being at a crossroads. When you are at a crossroads, you realize that forward is the only way. There is no going backwards. Going forward requires sacrifice. It requires you to forsake the other path. It requires you to forsake that which is behind you. That was that scripture that came up in the last reading. Forgetting what is behind me, I press toward the mark. Have you been pressing toward the mark? What's the mark? To make your life a living testimony of your intentions and convictions. There is something here in these cards about making a declaration. Words with the force of authority behind them. Saying what you mean. I think there's a trepidation with the Page of Swords there, and that the Page of Swords can be, what's the word I want to use? The Page of Swords can be pressed about words and fickle in making a decision about whether to say something, because they take words at face value and they don't really recognize that words have different context. But the Emperor, when the Emperor shows up in a reading, it's really boss energy. It's about being in the position of authority. And when I think that in these cards, when you're in the position of authority to say something, you recognize the force behind your words. Almost like if a king says or a queen says, you are the Duke of Sussexonbury, right? These words have power, and these words shape your social standing. They shape the perception of you, but it also shapes your perception of yourself and the way that you show up in the world. So there's a paring down, and there is a understanding that at this moment, this isn't just talking to run your mouth. This is speaking to make a declaration. So I'm really curious about what kinds of declarations and conversations you all are having in your life at this moment. So anyways, the Sun, the Lovers, and the Hermit. The Hermit is always this fascinating card for me because there's a disenchantedness and a dissatisfaction for me in the Hermit. The hermit is always looking for something and they're seeking something. And with that light, it's their own perception and judgment. So there's this aspect of the hermit where, in seeking truth, you are not looking for validation from other people. In seeking truth, you are looking to verify something with your own perception and judgment. There's a lot here in validating the way that you see things and not necessarily needing the peanut gallery to agree with you. That in order that when you see something a certain way, here we are with the sun, there is a parting here of, are you moving forward with the truth you've perceived with your own eyes, or are you still waiting on a consensus? Are you still waiting for other people to agree with you? Do you need other people to agree with you in order for you to see what you know you saw? The hermit is saying that there can be an isolation that comes with choosing that path. And honestly, when the lover comes up, you don't really have a choice, right? You can't unsee things. I think that's a lot of what's here. You cannot unsee something. When the lovers comes after the sun, it's like you've seen it now and you know it and you can't go back. So what are you going to do? Right? Are you truly ready to embark upon this path of solitude where the truth you perceive is not dogma? It is not something somebody else told you. It is rooted in your own perception and judgment. This has been coming up a lot with my clients, this idea of, can you trust your own perception and judgment? And who are the people and what are the experiences that undermine your capacity to do so? How have people used language? And I mean this in the most mundane sense, the way they talk to you, what they call you, how they speak, the tone, the sarcasm. Is there compassion in their voice? Are they rigid? Are they nihilist? Are they cynical? Are they oblivious to reality? How have people used language to shape your perceptions? And in what ways are you stripping away that language in order to verify things with your own mind and your own judgment and your own perceptions? There's this sense that when you divorce your perceptions and judgments from the need for validation from other people, you kind of have to look at what you're looking at again. There's like this reinterpretation. So I'm hoping these cards give us some insight here, because I'm just like, what are y'all talking about to me today? Look at all these pentacles. King of Wands, Seven of Pentacles, and Ace of Pentacles. So let's see here. We have the King of Pentacles, Ace of Pentacles, and Seven of Pentacles, Two Swords, and One Wand. The rest are all of these trump cards. This is really interesting because over the past few months, I've been thinking about the difference between the Emperor and the King of Wands, and how it's really easy to conflate those two cards. So one, if we just think of the hierarchies of power out in the world, a king would be under an emperor. So if you have an empire, there might be a king or intermediary leader who is an authority over a specific region of the empire. So let's just say the emperor and the empress in tarot, they are in charge of the empire of tarot. Wands, swords, pentacles, and cups. But there are intermediary authority figures in each of those suits. King of Wands, Queen of Wands, King of Cups, Queen of Cups, King of Swords, Queen of Swords, and King of Pentacles and Queen of Pentacles. So if you take the archetype of Yang authority in the Emperor and Yin authority in the Empress, there is authority and dominion that is exercised over people and the world around you. And for the Empress, there's authority that is exercised over your inner world, over your body and your person, authority that is exercised over the resources, regulating the resources, aggregating, right? Contemplating, not contemplating, I want to say conserving and discerning, making an assessment. So let's take those two phrases, right? Kings Kings consume and dissect. Queens conserve and discern. One is a process of what you're doing outside. The other is the process of what you're doing inside. So if we take the King of Wands under the realm of the Emperor, um, which which consumes and dissects, right? So this idea of like an emperor expanding their empire, claiming dominion and authority over a realm. The King of Wands is only concerned with wands. It's only concerned with your will. It's only concerned with your drive. It's only concerned with what you're doing with your energy. Your what's the word I'm looking for? Your intention, the authority of your will, and the strength of your will. So bear with me as I pull this all together. There's so much in here about stepping into the seat of authority, which really begs the question to me, like when you step into the seat of authority, there is an implication that somebody else has been there, right? So who or what has been in the seat of authority in your life, shaping your perceptions, defining your judgment, and standing as a bias for how you see and interpret not only the world around you, but yourself. What voices are in your head that come up real loud that really make you undermine what you're seeing at any given point? So back to the King of Wands here. The King of Wands is an authority that executes their will. I wonder too if with all of these kings and queens and emperors that there's conflict here, that someone or something is competing for authority in your life, and it might not even be someone outside of you. If we just look at the suits of the face cards here, the King of Pentacles is like, well, you know you need to make some money. You know you need a job. You know you need to be materially secure. You know you need to strive and strive and strive and get some authority in this world so you can make that money. You know you need a new job, right? The Queen of Swords is like, yeah, but these folks around here lying, and so what you gonna do, right? The King of Pentacles and the Queen of Swords are probably the most in conflict in this reading, because the Queen is like, I don't really care about any of that stuff out here, right? The Queen is like, somebody needs to speak up. Somebody needs to say this. And if it puts my job in jeopardy, if it puts my security in jeopardy, then so be it. Okay? Then we get to the King of Wands, who actually is a nice little intermediary between the two. And the King of Wands reminds us to check in with our intention, to check in, what is this conviction that we're seeking to embody in our life? A lot of times over the past year, I've been talking about intention and conviction, and this King of Wands really brings that back to the fore in this moment, which is important because Saturn is still in Sagittarius, and we have an eclipse in Sagittarius on July 16th. But there are some people who do not know what their convictions are and could not articulate them to you if you ask them. But my answer to that is your actions and your choices are the biggest hint and embodiment of what your intentions are. So even if you're not consciously aware of what your convictions are, even if you don't know why you've done something, you can look at what you've actually done as a marker or indication for what your own convictions and intentions are. So I'm trying to find this bridge between language and intention. I'm trying to find this bridge between word and conviction. And I'm trying to articulate all of the things that are at stake when we finally get the courage to step into the seat of authority in our lives and to abandon all of the language and all of the judgments and dogma that has shaped our perceptions. There's this real sense of a fight over our judgment, that there's a vested interest in us perceiving something a certain way. And so words and images are the two things that are used in order to shape our perception of ourselves. Last night I was having a conversation with someone about gender and language, and how language is a consensus, right? Language is a consensus around how we should perceive something. It's a consensus around the cultural and historical context of something, right? So when language is the only tool that we have to shape our identity, it gets really complicated, because depending on the cultural context, that language can be limiting and not really create a pathway that embodies how you experience yourself. So this is why we come up with new words like non-binary. Non-binary is like the closest thing that some people get to a word that defines how they experience themselves. So that begs another question. How are words limiting your capacity to communicate and articulate your experience of the world around you and the experience of yourself? One of the things that has been most indicative over the past few weeks of this words mean things in a political, social, and moral context is the fight over the term concentration camp. Why would someone be so invested in not calling what is obviously a concentration camp not a concentration camp? Why would they be so invested in that? Because if we call something a concentration camp, it is shaping the perception of that thing. It arises in a certain judgment and it activates our own conviction. This has such personal implications for us. Yes, huge implications for what's going on in America, for what's going on in Europe and the refugees there, but it has huge implications for us personally. As we step into the seat of authority in our own life, what is the language that we actually have in order to articulate who we're becoming? When you decide to make your life a living testimony to your intentions and convictions, it can be really tempting to make some big declaration, to put it on Facebook, to put it on Twitter, to put it on Instagram, right? I've just seen a few people recently embracing their trans identity, and they make this huge declaration: my name is now, insert new name. My pronouns are, insert pronoun. My whatever it may be is this. So in your life, how are you using language? I almost want to say like when I see the Queen of Wands here, I almost want to say, you can't say that to me, and I'm not going to stand for it. Like, I know what you meant when you said that, and you're not allowed to talk to me that way, right? Now, you can say that, but what's the action that backs that up? That's a tough one. And when we have the King of Pentacles here, we're always going back to the implications of something on our security, the implications of something on our capacity to have what it is that we need to survive in a material sense: money, health, time, energy, resources, a shelter and roof over our head, right? So I want to just be really specific here. If you're looking for a job, if you need a new job, if you are underemployed, unemployed, underpaid, the King of Pentacles is definitely talking directly to you. And the King of Pentacles is talking about not the King of Pentacles, but this first row, the Page of Swords, Emperor, and Queen of Swords, is talking about this moment where it may not actually be a declaration that you make out loud. It may be a declaration to yourself. It may be a decision that you make that you that you shut your mouth and then you just don't say anything anymore, right? The Page of Swords is really naive. The Page of Swords thinks that if we just have a conversation about it, then everything will be great. Like, that we'll be able to solve this. We could just talk this out. Maybe if I write an email, maybe if I send a letter or a text message, that's going to be the thing that's going to fix it. That, we're humans, we speak, we use words, so let's just have a conversation and talk it out. But the Emperor never asks for permission. And when you use language in this way, you are opening something up for negotiation. So I'm asking you, what is something that is no longer up for negotiation in your life? How are you letting go of your own naivety about how you show up in your life? How are you letting go of the naivety that says that, well, if we just talk about it, then that will fix it? When in fact, the thing that you're even trying to talk about is not up for negotiation. The thing that you want to have a conversation about is not even up for negotiation. It is not someone else's choice whether or not to call you by your right pronoun, call you by your right name, call you by your right gender. It is not somebody else's choice to define who you are with their words. It is not somebody else's choice to agree with what you say to them about what your needs are. So when you step into the emperor's seat, there's this sense of, number one, my actions speak louder than my words. And so we get to the Queen of Swords, and it's like, well, I don't really need to say anything else to you because this thing is not up for debate. I'm in charge of who I am, of shaping perceptions and judgments of who I am in my job, in my family, in my relationships, right? All of these different venues. There's this moment now, collectively and personally, where we are abandoning naivety. We are abandoning curiosity. We are abandoning this idea that having a conversation is enough. That really has huge implications across the board because this idea of civility says that, well, let's just all come to the table, let everyone have a seat, and we'll talk about it. And then when everybody leaves, it goes back to or stays exactly the way that it was, right? So this emperor strips the power of negotiation. That's kind of deep if you think about it, because engaging in a conversation with someone means that you value their opinion, you value their judgment, that your mind is open to being changed, and you're assuming that their mind is open to being changed. And if you just find the right words or use reason, that then you guys can come to an agreement. But the emperor is like, no, this is not the moment for that. This is not the moment for allowing your own perceptions and judgments, which shape truth for you, to be open for negotiation. The truth of what your needs are, the truth of who you are, your identity. Now, when you come to that realization that some things cannot be solved with a conversation, it really is letting go of naivety. Because now you can't, the sun card, you cannot unsee it. You cannot unsee what you've seen. You cannot unknow. You can't not know it. So that begs another question. What is something in your life in this moment, in over the past, and it might be to come over the next few weeks? What is something that you've seen that you've now verified with your own eyes that might have been a theory before that now you can't unsee? I'm kind of thinking of like the pictures that are going around of families who are detained, who are dying, these really graphic images, and how you can't unsee that. But in your personal life, when I say see, I don't necessarily mean visibly. I mean things that are coming into your conscious awareness that maybe you did not have the language before, maybe your own bias and investment in telling a certain story blocked it, but now you can't unsee it. So what do? Humans want to be validated. Humans want to be accepted. Humans want their experiences to exist within the context of relationship and community. But the cost of authenticity often means that people won't agree with you. The cost of trusting your own perception and judgment, the very nature of that means that there is no validation. No one can get inside your head, inside your body, and inside your experience and validate what it is that you're seeing. Nobody can do that. So the Hermit really speaks about embarking upon a solo mission in some ways. I want to say that this particular solar eclipse is a moment, right? Because I was saying a solar eclipse can be abandoning, walking away from something, and it can also be embracing something. But this moment for me really seems like an abandonment. This moment seems like an eclipse where we are abandoning something. Um, I want to go back to that Queen of Swords for a minute just to say that the Queen of Swords is not really trying to convince you of anything. The Queen of Swords doesn't need you to agree with her that or him or it or them or they that they're right. They don't need, the Queen of Swords does not need you to agree. And that as much as the Queen of Swords chooses her words wisely to speak, the Queen of Swords chooses her words wisely internally as well, meaning the internal process of negotiating with our own perceptions. The internal process of negotiating with our own perceptions is actually two things. It is measuring what we perceive against the consensus, and it is measuring what we perceive against our own narratives that we're invested in for some reason. This is what we're walking away from. We're walking away from the narratives that we're invested in. We are abandoning using words in conversation to negotiate things that are not up for negotiation. You can't unsee it. You can't unsee the experiences that you've had, the revelations that you've had. You cannot unsee it. It has permanently changed your perception of yourself and the world around you. Your naivety and your innocence has been abandoned and kicked to the side because you just can't unsee it. We end here with the Ace of Pentacles. The Ace of Pentacles is kind of like the door to the secret garden. In this deck, the Nine of Pentacles is like this gate into a garden with like these ornate doors. And for me, the Ace of Pentacles looks like one of those doors. So there's the craftsmanship and the skills and the tools that are required to craft that door. There is a door as an entryway to a new room, a new world, a new life, a new experience. There is a door as a barrier. A door as, do you have the key to get in? Do you have access? Before the Ace of Pentacles is the Seven of Pentacles. And I think that these pentacles circle back around to the King of Pentacles at the top. The King of Pentacles for me on the bottom is a couple of different things. It is our collective economic circumstances. I'm thinking of employment, banking and finance. I'm thinking of trade. And I'm honestly thinking of the larger implications of those things at this moment in a political sense. But also, sometimes the cards are just really mundane, and they're mundane in the sense that you need money to live. You need some source of income. You're trading your time and your skills and your talent for money or for whatever the resources are that you need. The Seven of Pentacles speaks to that moment in between planting and harvest, that season between planting and harvest. The season of planting that's the most work, right? You must prepare the ground, you must acquire the seed, you must till and you must hoe and you must plant. And then the easy moment comes. There is watering, there is pruning, there is removing the weeds. And this is the Seven of Pentacles for me. this moment of pruning, of understanding the nature and effort required to grow what it is that you're growing in your life, and understanding that there can be things that come to destroy that. There can be boll weevils, pests, weeds, and then there's a whole lot of other things that are not in your control. Do you have enough rain? Is it too much rain? There's a vulnerability in this moment, in that just like that season between planting and harvesting, you are at the whims of nature. You're at the whims of fate. And you can't force something to take root. And you can't force something to sprout above ground. And you can't force something to bear fruit. All you can do is understand the science and the technique, and you can understand the time and the seasons, and you can aggregate and get all your tools together. You can get all your seeds, you can read all the books, but there's always this element that is outside of your control. And there's a real question of how you deal with that. You cannot, no matter what you do, get sat down in the ground with that seed and be like, all right, now you better take root up in here. And you can't pull the leaves out of the seed to make it sprout above ground. So because the King of Wands is coming before the Seven of Pentacles, there is, hold on. That ain't nobody. Because the Seven of Pentacles, because of the King of Wands coming before the Seven of Pentacles, this conversation about your own intentions and how they inform your actions. And as you're looking around at the evidence of your intentions, the evidence of your intentions is your current circumstances. The evidence of your convictions is your current circumstances. The evidence of your convictions is, what do you do with your money? What do you do with your time? How do you treat your body? What are you doing with your health? What do you do for work? Your whole life is evidence of your intentions and convictions. And so again, if you can't find the words to articulate that, look around at your life. Look at the choices that you've made. This lovers eclipse moment where we're abandoning something is a moment of understanding, like, oh, that's why I've been doing that. That's why I've made this choice. That's why I work this job. That's why I've chosen these partners. That's why I've lived in this city. That's why I've done this, done that, done this, done that. Now that you're aware of that, you can't unknow it. You can't just not know something that's in your mind. You might want to forget, but you can't. So in this moment of awareness, where you really are becoming aware of what your intentions and convictions are, I feel like this Seven of Pentacles is this moment of, what do you do after the awareness? What do you do after you know something? There isn't this always this immediate thing where, oh, well, now I know, so I do this. I've talked about in previous readings how the process of becoming aware of something is often the hardest part of any journey, any process of growth, because there is so much in the way of you becoming aware of this thing. As outlined in this reading, there's your need for validation. There are other people's perceptions and judgments. There's the tape playing in your head, and there's your own emotional and psychological investment in telling a certain story. And so this is why becoming aware of something is the hardest part of the journey. In the last reading, I was talking about how you needed to give yourself a hand and pat yourself on the back for that part of the work, for even being open to and allowing something to break you open, allowing yourself to sit in the vulnerability of even being able to say, well, I was interpreting that wrong, or it was me all along, or this was my real intention. So I think that that still stands. Pat yourself on the back. But also know that with knowledge and with awareness comes responsibility. And that's a lot of what's in this reading. This moment of abandoning your naivety and curiosity, understanding that certain things are not up for negotiation, and we're not going to bicker over what certain words mean. We're not going to fight about, well, what you really meant was this, or what you really meant was that. We're not going to have that conversation because some things are not up for negotiation. Your willingness to engage in conversation over certain things signals to other people that your mind is open to be changed, that you are up, that whatever this thing you're discussing is up for negotiation. What is not up for negotiation in your life? And what have you been acting like it's up for negotiation by continuing to having conversations, thinking you need to convince people, thinking that if you just frame the email correctly and use the right words, that this will solve the problem. Words have their limitations, and actions speak louder than words. There's an opportunity here. Now, the thing is that after the Seven of Pentacles, I would like to see the Nine or Ten of Pentacles. This would be harvest for me. This would be reaping the rewards or reaping the fruit of your labor or reaping a harvest from what you've sown. But I don't see the Nine of Pentacles or Ten of Pentacles here. I don't even see the Eight of Pentacles. I see the Ace of Pentacles. So I can read this a couple of different ways. I can read this as the opportunity that comes from this in-between season. But I'm more inclined to think of this as a back at one kind of moment. The question with the Seven of Pentacles is always, is this thing going to produce fruit? Am I going to reap a harvest from this investment that I made? After the King of Wands is saying, is my action going to have the intended outcome? Am I going to see tangible evidence of my intentions in my world around me? And the Ace of Pentacles to me often says, at least in this context, the Ace of Pentacles to me says that there's another way, either that there's another way that your intentions can be embodied in the world around you. But also, what are some of the unintended consequences of your intentions? What are some of the unintentional consequences of your intentions? That's like such a play on words. What are some of the things that you maybe did not foresee? I want to do this last thing where I look at these cards in vertically and kind of see what the story is there. So we have the Page of Swords, the Sun, and the King of Wands. I kind of feel like whichever way you go in this reading, it's like you can't stay at this Page of Swords place. You cannot stay in this naivety. You cannot stay in this like, well, maybe there's another way to see this. No, there isn't. And I think that there's a lot of like shame and a lot of like power play around saying that somebody just interpreted something wrong. To say that somebody just interpreted something wrong, or for someone to tell you that you interpreted it wrong, is a form of gaslighting. It's a form of saying, you cannot trust your own eyes. You're crazy. So what you saw, what you see, you just misinterpreted. That's not what they really meant. And the Page of Swords is like, oh, right? Very Gemini. Very Gemini. The Page of Swords is like, oh, well, yeah. Maybe you're right. Maybe they didn't mean that. Maybe I did interpret it wrong. And there's also the way that happens within the context of relationships, where we second guess our first mind and we say that, well, that's not really what they meant. What are you trying to hold on to by denying your first mind? What is it? Why are you so invested in even undermining your own perceptions and judgments and saying that well, there's another way to interpret this, and so maybe that's just not really what they meant, and so I'm not even gonna be hurt about it because that's not really what they meant anyway. So like, what is that about? What is that about? Why are you invested in not believing what you perceived? Because sometimes it's not even other people undermining our own perceptions and judgments. It's our own craving for more information to fill in the picture. Where real discernment in the form of the Queen of Swords don't need all of that extra information. Conserving and discerning means that you could take a little piece of something, you could look at what they said or what they did, you can intuit it, whatever it may be, and you already know. So you don't really even need to sit and ponder and think about and replay the conversation in your head and revisit and do all of these things, because the Queen of Swords is like, no, I know exactly what you meant, and I know exactly what you said, and I got you. Right? We don't even need to have a conversation. I don't even need to tell you what I saw because I know. Right? I just want to reiterate this point of like, everything is not up for negotiation. Stop talking about it. Stop having conversations. Just stop. Some things are not up for negotiation. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you can move on. Because you realize that even if somebody does change their mind, it's not because you negotiated your own needs through conversation. The next row here, the other thing that's popping up into this reading for me is because there's so much air and fire. There's 2 swords, the page and Queen of Swords, the Emperor, the Sun, and King of Wands are all fire. I'm kind of torn about what Lovers is. I don't really know. But there is this tension between, just elementally, between accepting the world as it is and enforcing your own will and your perception to shape the world around you, taking actions to enforce whatever it is. There's a tension there. There's a tension between those two things. This second column here, the Emperor, the Lovers, and the Seven of Pentacles, that's kind of annoying because the Emperor is like, I'm the boss, I'm in charge, I grant thee and designate thee such and such. But again, there's this whole thing of it's not always clean and cut that way. And leading us to the Seven of Pentacles at a crossroads, but not really seeing immediate consequences from your choices. Finally, we have the Queen of Swords, the Hermit, and the Ace of Pentacles. It is a solitary and lonesome road to extricate yourself from negotiation, to abandon the need for validation of your perceptions and judgments, to let go of the constant conversations and negotiating of something immutable via words. I kind of like the question mark that comes at the end with the Ace of Pentacles. It's a kind of a question mark because Ace of Pentacles is like Capricorn. So with all aces, there's this air of establishing something, but not really necessarily knowing what that thing is going to turn into. So my last question here with these cards, what does it look like for you to go back to square one? What does it look like for you to extricate yourself from the negotiation process about who you are, embodying or the authority of your own perceptions and judgments as a means to validating truth? What does it look like for you to stop seeking more information? Seeking information is just seeking validation. It's just saying, I need more evidence to prove my point. I need more people's opinions. I need a consensus around this thing. How are you abandoning the need for consensus around that? There's a big question mark. It's a new moon. New moons are dark. New moons are moments where the seed of something is planted, but You're too close to it to really get a good look at it. So I don't know. That's all I have to say. Do y'all have any questions about anything? Do y'all have any questions for me about this reading, about eclipses, about an eclipse in Gemini, about, um, yeah. Y'all got any questions? Yeah, I don't know. Air is annoying. Air is, ew. Hello? What's up? Okay, just text me when you get close. Okay, bye bye. Um, yeah, y'all got any questions? I don't know. This reading makes me very uncomfortable because it's like you can like embark like you can have all of these internal shifts in perspective, internal shifts and in intentions, and not see any evidence for it in your life, in the world around you. And when you don't see evidence for it, either in your material circumstances changing or in your relationships changing or whatever it may be, it can be really tempting to believe that maybe you were wrong, or that you still haven't got it right, or you didn't make the right choice. But don't fall for that. Um, what all should we be paying attention to during these eclipses? I don't even know how to answer that question because, like, I just did a reading on the eclipse. Oh, I forget you're in Hawaii. Yeah, you're gonna have to go back and listen to this whole thing because that's what this tarot reading was about. What you should be paying attention to. Also, you can go read my forecast. Go read the pinned tweet on my Twitter page. You can go to my website, thepeoplesoracle.com, and download the 2019 Sidereal Astrology Guide. I have a whole lot of resources out there around what you should be paying attention to. And like, if you're just asking that question now, like, you're really, really, really late. Um, Go to my YouTube channel and watch Mutable Madness 2019, that video that I did in like January or something like that. Or maybe it was December of last year. Don't remember when I did it. I have so much free information out there on these eclipses that I've been talking about since last year. Um, yeah, they're all over my YouTube channel. The most concise thing that you could do is download the 2019 eclipse guide because that gives you both a collective and personal context for these eclipses. Um, Look at you. Look at you, Lily. Good for you. Good for you. Sometimes you just have to say that, and that your word needs to stand without negotiation. That's that Emperor and Queen of Swords, man. It's like, yo, I'm about to say this to you, and this is really not to open the door for a conversation. This is just to let you know what it is so that we're clear. Now, you can interpret this how you want to, but don't get caught up. That's the Emperor and Queen of Swords energy. Woo! That's just like super. It reminds me of all of the women in the debates, the Democratic debates over the past two nights. Like, Marianne Williamson was not here for you. She was like, reparations now. Even Kamala Harris, she was like, so you're gonna apologize for not supporting busing? Like, she called Biden out. Even Elizabeth Warren, the most coherent and cohesive candidate out there, who actually has been devoting time to policy and really connecting to people. So I'm kind of liking that energy. I'm liking it a lot. The Queen of Swords is not the one to play with. The Queen of Swords will hurt your feelings and not even do it on purpose, just because the Queen of Swords is not really trying to spare your feelings for the sake of truth. So don't be sparing people's feelings for the sake of truth, but also know when to hold them and know when to fold them. You gotta know when to hold them, know when to fold them. Anyways, I think that's that on that. This started off kind of rough, but I think I got to the gist of it here. Made decisions that are putting me on a path I've never been on. Scary, but I have to move forward. This is what happens at eclipses, my friends. Eclipses like will strip you down to the essence of a thing. That eclipse last year in July, the first eclipse in Gemini, whew, that was intense on a lot of levels. And you can look back to that eclipse in July of 2018, the end of, no, beginning of July 2018, as an important moment. Gemini often means two of something: two jobs, two men, two projects, two women, two people, two relationships, two business partnerships, two paths, two cities, two dogs, two lovers, two lawsuits, two problems. Um, yeah, Gemini can often always means two of something. So for me, it's two jobs right now that I have to like fix my life about. Um, oh, you know what? I wanted to say about the lovers here in the middle. The lovers can often indicate being of a double mind. And a double mind literally means having two minds of something. Um, yeah, so yeah, man. I don't know. This whole straddling the fence thing and like lying to yourself about what you really mean and lying to other people about yeah, just is over for that. All right, well that's that on that. I have to go. Somebody's about to ring my doorbell, so I'm going to talk to you in the near future. Catch me sometime soon. I really want to do something on the July 2019 forecast to try to tie this whole picture for you together. And it might be Monday. I don't know. I'll find out. Life is life right now. So we'll talk soon. You guys have a great happy new moon solar eclipse. And I'll be on Twitter. I'll be on Instagram. See y'all later.